Hello everyone, this is Venugopal. Today we are going to see data types in C language. So we'll see what exactly mean by a data types. The name itself suggesting it's saying something what we are going to do with this data types. Data types, that means what? We are telling to the compiler what kind of data, or you can say what kind of data or type of data we are going to use in our program, and how much amount of memory is going to occupy for occupy for that variable. It is nothing but it is called as a data type. So what kind of data we are going to use, or we are going to access in our program, and how much of amount of memory space will be occupied by that particular variable, it is called as what? Data type. Already we have seen the syntax, but I'll tell you again. The syntax of declaring this data type or using this thing is data type, and then we are using what? Identifier. Identifier 1, identifier 2, dot dot dot. You can declare number of identifier. Identifier is nothing but we are going to use here what? This is the syntax declaring a variable name, right? That means we are going to tell the compiler this identifier 1, identifier 2, and the identifier so and so n variables are of type what? Whatever the data type I am going to use here. For example, if I'll say like int x, right? Now here int stands for what? It's a data type now. And x is what? It is an identifier, or it's a variable. So x is what? X is a variable which is going to store what type of value? Integer type of value. So for integer type of value, it is going to be occupy some particular memory size. That memory size we are going to discuss very shortly. So this is what the definition of a data type. Then whenever we are talking about data types, the data types are majorly classified into three categories. Data types. They're classified into three categories. One is called as primitive or built-in or primary, or you can also say some basic types. This is the first classification. These all meanings are same only. Primitive, built-in types, primitive types, primary types, basic types. The second category is derived types, or you can say these are the secondary type. Secondary types. And the last one is called as user-defined data types. User-defined types. So this is what the major classification of your data types. The data types are classified into these three basic categories. One is primitive data types, second is derived data types, third is user-defined data types. In primitive data types, we'll see the example like int, like char, like floating points, like boolean, etc. This all comes under your basic data types. Whenever we'll talk about derived types, it comes like arrays, pointers, strings, reference, etc. These data types comes under your derived data types. And finally, user defined data types means structures, unions, type def, enumerations, etc. Don't worry about these all data types. We will see one by one whenever we will see the concept related with these data types. So that's all about data types. Data types is very simple, that we are telling the compiler what kind of data I am going to use. This is what one example. What kind of data I am going to use, only we are telling to the compilers, and how much amount of memory it is going to be used. So we'll see further classification of this primitive data types as well, as the data types are classified into three main categories. One is primitive, second is derived, and third is user defined data types. In primitive, integer, character, float, and boolean, etc. In derived data types, arrays, pointers, strings, reference types, etc. And in user defined data types, structures, unions, and this type def, these all data types will come under user defined data types. Now we will see this primitive data types in more details. So these primitive data types are classified into, like we have seen, like integer, then floating, then for example character. So this integer, float, and characters, again they are having some classifications. Like integers are further classified into short, int, and long int. Similarly, here also in float we are having three types: float, double, and long double. Depending on the range of the users, what kind of data and how the range is going to be used in this particular thing, this data types has been classified. Again, the short int and long int data types has been categorized into two parts. Every data type is categorized into signed and unsigned. Signed and unsigned. Similarly, long int. Right now, let us understand what exactly mean by the signed and unsigned. Now, for example, in my previous example, just we are taking like int x. Now, this int x means what? This int x is by default, it is a signed int. Signed int means what? For example, we have already seen the range of the integer in my first introductory part of character set. And that we have learned what exactly mean by integers, constants. So the range of integer is what? Minus 327682 plus 32767. This is the range of integer numbers, right? So whenever I will say like a signed int, that means this x can hold the value between this minus to plus value. But if suppose I'm giving like unsigned, I'm modifying this int unsigned x. Now this will consisting only what? This will only consisting of positive values only. सिर्फ पॉजिटिव वैल्यूज इसमें रहेंगे, अभी स्टोर करेंगे. तो पॉजिटिव वैल्यूज मींस व्हाट? इन दोनों का एडिशन. व्हाट इज द एडिशन ऑफ दिस टू? द रेंज विल बी 0265535. This would be the range. So this is what, depending upon the size of the variable of the data type, right, the value will be held by this variable. Now suppose if you want to store any number in between, suppose 20,000 if you want to store. Now this 20,000 you can easily hold in this first variable. This is signed int. If you're not giving any signed int, by default it is signed only. Okay, but suppose if you want to store a 50,000 number, Will this 50,000 can be held by this signed int now? No, because the range is C. This is from only positive 32,000. So in that case, you have to define this variable as what? Unsigned. Then the capacity will become like 0 to 65,535. This is what the difference between signed and unsigned. Signed means both positive and negative. But when I will say unsigned, they are only positive numbers. So for more ranges of the each and every data type, you can Google it out. You will find a latest range of all the data types. So we are not going to discuss the ranges, but we are going to discuss what the memory size it is going to hold. For example, short data type, it occupies 2 bytes of memory. Int data types, now it occupies 2 bytes or 4 bytes, depending upon compiler size. If we use 16-bit compiler, then int size is how many bytes? 2 bytes. But if you use 32-bit compiler, then int size is how much? 4 bytes. I will show you the size practically in program. But you should remember, whenever if anybody asks what is the size of int data type, so your answer must be either 2 bytes or 4 bytes, depending on what? Depending on compiler size. If your compiler size is 16-bit, then integer size would be 2 bytes. If your compiler size would be 32-bit, then your integer size would be 4 bytes. So this is what the size of your short and int. And what is the short and int? Then short and int, the ranges of this both the integers are same. That is minus 327682 plus 32767, right? But depending on the size, these data types has been classified. Now long int data type size is 4 bytes. Similarly, we'll see this float. Oh, float spelling is misspelled here. Anyway, fine. 4 byte float will take 4 bytes of memory, double will take 8 bytes of memory, and long double will take 10 bytes of memory. And character will take only 1 byte. The length of the character byte is always 1. Now again here it has a classification of signed char and unsigned char, exactly like your integer. Signed char means the range will be minus 128 to plus 127. This is the range of signed char. But whenever I'll talk about unsigned, it will be 0 to 255. I hope you are getting. Anyway, we will see all this. What we can say practically, we will see this all data type classification in our upcoming video examples on data types. This is what the classification like this, this, and like this, like this. So it's all about data types, a basic structure, what exactly we have seen, what exactly mean by data type. Then whenever you talk about data type, two things you should remember. What type of data? Data type tells two things in short, okay? And size of data is going to hold. These are the two important things, right, which will be telling by this data type to the compiler. So we'll see in our next video, we will see some of the practical examples related with data types. We will see how to store the data types and how to retrieve the data types. One more important thing is that here, that is format specifier. So whenever you want to read or write the data onto the screen, in terms of whenever you're using this out of any of the data type, integer, character, float, or string, anything, so there must be a format specifier you need to use. For example, I'll tell you in short, %d is used for integer, like %f is used for float, then %c is used for character. If you're using complete string, %s, then this is used for what? String. I'll tell you practically everything. These are the very important format specifier which are used while reading and writing the data to the console and from the console. This all will be explained in our practical example. So do watch and please give your suggestions. How did you like these videos? And watch every video. So we will meet on our next video. Till then, watch. Bye bye. Take care.